Dread House, written by A.C. Hessenauer, narrated by Allison Foyes. Monday. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles white. My stomach twisted in apprehension. I squinted ahead, trying to see any break in the trees. My only companions were the hum of my car and the faint ding whenever a rock hit the undercarriage. Otherwise, the forest surrounding Hideaway House seemed deadly silent and perfectly still. I wondered if there was anything living in here. I rolled my window up. Having it open was making me feel oddly vulnerable. I sighed loudly. The first mistake I made was the dress. To be fair, my options were limited. I certainly couldn't roll up in my bridesmaid's dress to arrive at the house, even if it was my nicest dress. But perhaps something in between the skin-hugging mermaid gown that I could barely afford and the black cotton dress I was wearing tonight would have been a better choice. I take that back. My first mistake was saying yes in the first place. I had been feeling nervous as hell all day, and if I'm being honest, all week. It was one of those situations that left current me wishing past me had just said no. I had been caught up in the excitement and had readily agreed without a thought to stay a whole week out in the country with Emily's entire wedding party at her fiancé's family estate. She had actually used the word estate. Apparently, they called it the Hideaway House. Emily was one of my best friends, so I doubt I honestly would have tried to get out of it. But here I was, driving alone in the middle of nowhere, through the forest at night, left to fantasize about the excuses I might have invented had I been smart enough to anticipate this at the time. I could have gotten out of a few days at least, maybe arrive on Thursday or Friday, in time for the rehearsal dinner. Instead, I would be stuck out here for an entire week, trapped with a horde of strangers who would surely be drunk at least 50% of the time and hungover the rest. Emily had been planning this week for months, and I knew how much she looked forward to it. I had been at first as well, at least in the moment when I was feeling more social. But as the date drew nearer on my calendar, a feeling of reluctance and then eventually dread had started to set in. It wasn't just that I didn't know anyone. That fact alone was bad enough. But I had met Emily randomly, and I wasn't part of her world. The crowd she usually hung out with was way out of my league. As was Emily herself, really. What would I even talk about with these people? Nothing I said or did would make me fit in, and neither would my wardrobe. The bridesmaid's dress had been an extravagance I truly couldn't afford at the moment, and I had scrambled to come up with acceptable outfits for the rest of the week. I had even sent Emily a picture of one of them while I was packing, just to make sure she would approve. I threw my phone in the open suitcase on the bed afterwards in disgust. Since when did I care what other people thought of me, or obsess over my outfits? I took a deep breath as my hands gripped harder on the steering wheel. Google Maps said there were only 7 minutes left. I would be there before I knew it. I turned left down the narrow dirt road, into the woods about 15 or 20 minutes ago. I never liked driving down dirt roads and always drove well below the speed limit. The road was so narrow, I wasn't sure 2 cars could fit side by side going either direction. My eyes were starting to sting. I had been so hyper-focused on trying to see any vehicles coming on the road ahead that I had forgotten to blink. It was just getting on towards dusk now, and while that had made the forest feel a little spooky, I figured at least most cars would automatically have their headlights come on by now. That would hopefully give me a few seconds warning to avoid a head-on collision. Where the heck is this place? I was starting to worry I had made a wrong turn somewhere. Emily had said it was out in the boondocks. Now I understood why it was called the Hideaway House. While more than a little ominous, the woods were also oddly peaceful. The quality of the light flickering through the leaves gave the forest an ethereal, almost surreal atmosphere. My overactive imagination pictured a myriad of creatures roaming through the undergrowth. If I wandered off the path, who knows what I might find. Suddenly, I shot out into the open, exiting the forest without warning. The road changed to gravel. I passed through an open black gate with an ornate wrought iron scroll arching over the road that read Haverford. My jaw dropped open as the house came into view. It was more like a manor, rising from the middle of a vast field with a circular drive out front. There was an empty fountain in the middle of the drive. Off to the right was a narrower gravel drive that must lead to the garage or some sort of parking situation. No cars were parked out front, and I could not be the first to arrive. I wasn't sure where to park, but I opted to enter the roundabout and pull up to the side of the front door. Old-fashioned street lamps lined either side of the stairs, leading to the front door, giving off a warm, comforting glow. It was truly getting dark now, and I breathed a sigh of relief, grateful to have made it safely. I sat in the car for a moment and grabbed my phone to check for any new messages. Nothing new had popped up, and I noted with dismay that the signal strength looked pretty poor. A week stuck with pretentious strangers, and now no internet? I debated grabbing my bags and heading inside with everything at once, but I thought better of it, and sent Emily a quick text message, letting her know I had just arrived. I waited a minute or so, but got no response. Climbing out of the car, I stopped for a moment, staring up at the house, rising into the night sky before me. I felt strange, almost like I had been here before, stood in this exact spot. I shook my head to clear it. It must look similar to another house I'd seen. Obviously, I'd never been here before. I felt nervous walking up to the front door. Should I try knocking? It seemed unlikely anyone would hear me in a house this size. They must have a doorbell or something. I scanned either side of the intimidating double doors and couldn't find anything resembling a doorbell. There was a large metal door knocker in the shape of what appeared to be a deer skull with antlers. Sort of odd, I thought, as I gripped the one on the right and gave 3 short, gentle but firm taps. A minute or so went by with no response. I could hear nothing stirring on the other side of the door. I checked my phone, and still no response from Emily. Sighing, I gingerly grabbed the door knocker and knocked 3 more times, much harder this time. I looked around me as I waited. The cool night air held a slight chill now, scented with the first hints of fall. I breathed in deeply for a moment, one of my favorite smells. I scanned the shadows on the forest edge in the distance behind me as though someone could be watching me lingering on the doorstep. The black fence, which appeared to run around the property, at least on this side, stood between me and the woods. Somehow, that didn't feel very comforting at the moment. I couldn't just stand out here all night. Reluctantly, I tried the door handle, and it turned easily in my grasp. Sighing again, deeply this time, I turned the handle and pushed the heavy wooden door open a few inches. I peered inside and, scanning the entryway, didn't see anyone in my line of sight. I swung the door further and ducked in, head swiveling right and left. I took in a massive sweeping staircase straight ahead, with a landing at the top that branched to the right and left. A large chandelier hung over my head. The entrance was dimly lit with warm, golden light, with the hallways off to either side drenched in darkness. A set of double doors stood shut on either side of me. Great. No one seemed to be around, and I had no idea where to go. I stood there, debating what to do next, and feeling frozen in place with indecision. Then I heard a faint laugh. Voices. Off to the left, down the darkened hall. I started to make my way towards them, hoping Emily would be in there. I saw several paintings hanging on either side of the hall. I would have to stop and check them out later. I certainly was not an artist of any type, but I loved looking at paintings and learning about the artists. This house felt like a museum. The carpet underneath my feet was plush and deep, my feet sinking slightly with each step. I hoped I wasn't tracking in mud. I knew Josh's family was wealthy, but clearly Emily had been downplaying just how rich they were. I could not believe they owned this place. This wasn't even where Josh's parents lived year-round. I was pretty sure he had grown up here, but now it was more like a vacation house. The voices grew louder as I drew nearer, although I still couldn't make out anything they said. I passed several closed doors and additional hallways branching off the main hall on either side. Finally, I turned a corner and saw light up ahead, through a door that stood ajar at the end of the hall. I gathered my courage and strode up to the door, pulling the door open wider and stepping slowly inside. This room was well lit and appeared to be some sort of study, with several bookshelves whose worn wood rose from floor to ceiling, and a plethora of comfy-looking armchairs. 2 long couches in plush emerald velvet stood in the center of the room, facing each other on either side of a blazing fireplace. I felt as though I had stepped back in time. A handful of people lounged around the room. I slowly realized that all of them were men, wearing formal dress clothes, but in various states of disarray. Most of them had removed their jackets. I saw several slung around the room. Some had loosened or removed their ties as well. One of them, with unruly blonde, slightly shaggy hair, was laughing in the middle of the room. He held a heavy glass decanter, the dark liquid sloshing back and forth. He jumped onto the coffee table between 2 couches and was clearly delivering the punchline of some hilarious story. The room roared with laughter. A man seated to the right of the fireplace, facing me, chuckled and shook his head. He was wearing all black, even his tie. He pinched the bridge of his nose and shut his eyes briefly, almost as if he had a headache or was secretly annoyed by what the blonde guy had said. His nose was noticeably too big, but it gave his face some character. He had dark, slightly curly hair. One soft curl swung back and forth over his forehead, and his eyes flickered toward me. He and I made eye contact, before his gaze left my face and traveled quickly up and down my body. He took in my plain black dress and black flats. His eyes lingered on my hair, as usual. I had started going gray prematurely, my jet black wavy hair streaked with silver. I dyed it for years before finally quitting and embracing it. I was used to people staring at me because of it. Meeting my gaze again, he cleared his throat. "Ah, we're all set in here, thanks. You can tell the others they needn't check in again for the time being." He gestured across the room towards the sideboard. "There are some empty glasses you could take, though." I felt warmth growing in my cheeks and spreading across my face. I hoped I wasn't blushing furiously, and tried to control it. The room had suddenly gone quiet, and I realized with dismay that everyone had gone still and was now staring at me, waiting for my response. Oh my God, I thought. They think I'm some kind of maid or something. This was not the way I wanted this week to kick off. I stammered, struggling for what to say. I don't work here. I finished lamely. Surely my cheeks were bright red by now. The man's eyebrows flickered up slightly in surprise. A handsome man with a strong jawline stepped towards me from somewhere off to my right, his thick brown hair slicked back from his forehead. He had kind brown eyes. I recognized him immediately from the many pictures Emily had shown me. "You must be Cassie." He smiled warmly, raising his hand to shake mine. "I've heard so much about you from Emily. I'm Josh. It's a pleasure to finally meet you." 2 dimples framed his broad smile and dazzling white teeth. "Yes," I smiled back, hoping I looked as confident and self-assured as I was trying to project. "I'm Cassie Harper. It's so nice to meet you, too." I reached out and shook his hand. He clasped my hand between his and turned to nod at the dark-haired man. "And this idiot is Ben Fisher." He grinned, turning back to me. "We mostly ignore him." I smiled back and made a sort of nervous giggle. Ben was now standing, both hands in his pockets. He had been looking at the floor. He looked up at us, his dark eyes wide and earnest. Josh continued around the room, introducing me to each of his groomsmen. I was terrible at recalling names, especially when meeting a large group like this. All I was able to retain was that there seemed to be literally 3 different guys named Mike. There was an awkward silence for a moment after Josh finished the introductions. Ben cleared his throat, catching my attention. I glanced back his way. "Sorry," he mumbled. "My mistake." He turned and walked away, stopping at the French glass doors on the opposite end of the room. He gazed out into the swiftly darkening evening. The sun seemed to have sunken ridiculously quickly. Only a red glow could be seen on the horizon. I was glad to have made it here just in time before dark. The thought of being out in those woods at night sent a shiver down my spine. I could see Ben's face in his reflection in the window. He seemed to stare out at nothing. "It's no big deal," I said to his reflection, wanting to move past it quickly. I turned back to Josh. "Where's Emily?" "Ah!" Josh exclaimed. He had let go of my hands and clapped his together. "She and the girls are upstairs. You just missed dinner a bit ago. We can show you to your room, and I can have something sent upstairs for you."
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.